Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat
Thank you and welcome to Newsline Live, broadcasting as we almost always do from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. We are, of course, part of the Capital Maharaja media stables, and we are proud at Newsfirst to be the people's voice, representing the people's interest at every opportunity, and none, I assure you, are wasted. Of course, the people's protest carries on, not only at Galle, which appears to be sort of focal point, but in Galle and in other cities, even in Jaffna, which I was particularly pleased to see, because of course security up there is a little bit more intense than here, and nevertheless the people felt obliged and morally obliged to come and voice their agony out aloud, because the people's distress is actually very, very intense. And all you have to do is visit any of these protest sites, and you can feel the power of the people ooze out. The ambience is very much one of distress. They may be singing and so on, but they're singing out of sheer distress. That's what it is, and their frustration at what's going on. There are queues, and there don't seem to be any signs of it abating. And we have a sort of a new cabinet, which leaves out several of the older names. Let's see. But in the meantime, we thought we'd discuss today how to survive in an economy that is in a nosedive. To discuss this, we have former Director General at the SEC and also a former senior advisor to the Ministry of Finance back in the days, none other than, of course, Mr. Malik Cader. Very good evening to you, Malik. And
good evening, Faraz. It's nice to be on the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking time out and to tell us. You know, as I said, Sri Lanka's economy has been in a nosedive, for several weeks now. And the people's distress is there for everyone to see, and it's certainly not a party. And it is an absolute insult to the people of the country, who are sovereign, by the way, to sort of describe that anywhere close to a party. It is not. And if you don't understand the meaning of that, watch some films in which the people feel obliged to sing as part of their distress that is being caused. But Malik, I don't want to drag you into politics, but what do you do when a economy is in a nosedive? For example, and I'll lead with that question first, because of course you were at the SEC, you had you were sort of making sure that the Colombo Stock Exchange was running along within the rules, but it's been closed for 5 days, and then again now 5 days now. Yes,
Faraz, I think the announcement from the SEC was, it came out maybe yesterday or day before that. It very clearly stated that on the recommendation of the Colombo Stock Exchange, right, the SEC, under the powers vested under the SEC Act, has basically given approval, right, to close the market. But there's a little bit more than that for us. I think for the Colombo Stock Exchange to make that recommendation, the Stockbrokers Association of Sri Lanka, by a majority decision, right, wrote to the Colombo Stock Exchange and the SEC asking them to close the market for 5 days. What you need to understand in this whole scenario is, in addition to the 5 days, there was another 5 days prior to that, that the market was closed. We take the Saturday, Sundays out, so you're looking at a market which is being closed for about 14 days. That a market is closed for almost half a month. Now, whether this is good or bad is something which we need to look at. One of the things, perhaps the stockbrokers and the Colombo Stock Exchange would have wanted to prevent, obviously, is the drop in the index. What is inevitable in this whole scenario for us is that with the governor announcing that the basic interest rates will move up by 700 basis points,
Yeah.
7%. I saw a bank advertising already 15.5% for 3 to 12 months, right? So the margin calls, the margin given by the margin providers would have been in the range of 11 to 15%. But now overnight, that is going up. I heard someone saying that one company is even taking it up to 28%.
Wow.
Now it's very difficult to sustain, right? 20%, 28% interest regime, right, for margins. Obviously, there will be margin calls. When there are margin calls, obviously the index, right, the market will start coming down. This trying to close the market for 5 days, some argue that you're only trying to postpone the inevitable happening.
But that's not dissimilar to many things that the government have done.
Right.
And as President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has announced today, he's admitted that the fertilizer policy was not quite right. And, well, that's magnanimous, but the damage is done. So I can't understand. Yes, go on.
Let me go on
Sorry.
there. The Chamber of Commerce has also written to the SEC, right, giving their displeasure on this particular issue, because from their point of view, there are 3 points which they brought. One is investors should have an option. When they want to sell, right, they have to sell.
Yeah.
When they want to buy number two, they need to buy from the market. So that is why a market is there, right? And you need to get a valuation done on your portfolio. You're unable to do it for almost half a month, right? That is not how.
But what's the alternative? It may well crash, and it will probably crash.
For us, it's not the job of the regulator, right, to see whether the markets crash or not. The
Are
job
you
of
saying that is the inherent risk?
Yeah, that's the inherent risk. Investors will have to make that investment decision.
Okay.
That is left with the investor.
Now let's see. So basically, what you're saying that the public must be mindful where to invest.
Quite right.
So now with the various the interest rate rise, for example, should the public? We're trying to. I'm trying to ask you what sort of prudent advice you can give, without, of course, any. We must bear in mind that any investment in the stock market, for example, can go up as much as it can come down.
Yeah.
You must be fully aware of that. But what about other investments? What about people who place money in FDs? Is it time to cut it off and start anew so that you can take advantage of the higher rates?
Right. For us, we will go back to the stock market as well. The stock market certainly not a nosedive. I mean, it's you're talking about a nosedive, but well, it went up from 7,000 points to almost 14,000 points.
Yeah.
Right, when the interest rate regime was 5 to 6%.
Right.
So there was people saw opportunity in the market to make money and enhance their profits.
Yeah.
They did that, right? Now that is not going to happen, right? Because interest rates have shot up, right? People will go, obviously, right? They'll want to take their money and go and invest in risk-free investments, which will give them 15 to 20%. Now,
So now, what about if we had a FD or a savings account or whatever? Is it time to go and visit your bank and remake the arrangements anew and take advantage of the higher rates?
Yes, yeah. For us, you need to, I mean, obviously, if you go to the bank and if you have a fixed deposit, which is maturing next January, right, there'll be a huge penalty. The bank will basically have on you. So you need to calculate.
The penalty won't be, they just won't pay you the interest between now and then.
Right? So you can withdraw, and so you need to calculate and see whether there's an advantage. For us, having said that, I must tell you, now there is an interest regime moving up above 15%. Right? At one time, we had a 24% interest regime. Right, that was in the early 2000s.
But I noticed that some of the treasury bills last week or so
trading at 23.
At 23 point something
That's right.
percent.
Yes,
so
yes, okay.
why can't the general public? How can the general public take advantage of that?
Yeah, so they can go to a fund manager and invest in a money market fund, and they will obviously they'll have the opportunity
So
of
will they
benefiting.
be able to get 23%, or will it be a few points below or a few points more?
Well, it all depends on the fund manager,
Right.
How the fund manager does his trading. And there are some fund managers who are very good. You can even get more than that, because what happens is it's on the trading pattern, right? So, I mean, we are looking at like doubling your money in 3 to 4 years' time. There was a period in the 80s, late 80s, we had that. But now we are coming, right, to a regime like that.
So is this good news for folks who are dependent on interest income?
Yes. Now, for instance, I must tell you, there is, I wonder whether you heard about Warren Buffett,
Yes, yes.
a world famous investment guru.
Yes.
He said, right, the eighth wonder in this world
Yeah.
is compounding interest. Okay, so if you can put your money at this moment of time, I mean, not in any financial institution, you have to make that calculated decision. You have to look at whether this financial institution is stable and they're giving you good returns.
But how stable are Sri Lanka's banks now?
Well, there was Fitch rating basically which came out with 13 banks, 13 commercial banks, including the state banks, right? I mean,
What kind of rating was
yeah,
that?
I mean, it was a negative rating. It was not very complimentary. Anyway, for us, you cannot expect a positive rating when the country rating is down. Generally,
So in that case,
generally, when the country rating, the bank's rating would be one notch lesser than the country rating,
So in
from
that-
an international point of view.
Yes, but when you say that, my thoughts are going to our dear national carrier, Sri Lankan Airlines. Now, they've put out a RFP.
Quite right.
And in between, of course, we've been downgraded. And on the 12th of April at 5 p.m., finally, the government has acknowledged that we are going into default situation for the first time ever.
Right.
So is that poor timing? Is it unfortunate for the board of Sri Lankan Airlines? Because surely they're not going to get very far when in essence, the airline is owned by our treasury.
Right. For us, even if they get far, we might have to pay a price on those leases, right? We might have to pay a very high price because, as you quite rightly said, Sri Lanka's rating has gone down. We are in a default status, and then if anyone is wanting to lend to us or lease aircrafts to us, we might have to pay a hell of a lot to lease those aircraft.
Now, Malik, what about people who are with leases on motorbikes, on cars, and so on? You know, they've all been having a tough time because most of these times the leases and so on are fixed. So should they leave it alone now?
Yeah, if they are fixed, they'll be very happy to leave it alone. And I think the finance companies or institutions should not meddle with it. There might be some companies who might want to meddle with it because what happens is cost
Is that legal?
what happens is from the company point of view, it's a cost of capital. They have calculated all those things and given the lease, right? But if they're going to get new capital coming in, they have to pay more. So the new leases are definitely going to be maybe double, right, the amounts you're paying right now.
But you know, with all these things, isn't it entirely possible that the interest rates will actually, as you can see, it's going up.
Yes.
So when interest rates go up, the primary borrower, if you like, is none other than the government of Sri Lanka. So doesn't that mean that prices will go up? And also, doesn't it also mean that small and medium enterprises will take a big hit and they won't be able to survive? And at the end of the day, we may find that it's only big business that is surviving, and that too with hardly a profit to write home about.
For us, the general theory is that the growth of the country, when the country is to grow 8 to 10%, interest regime should be low. Right? When the interest regime is high, right, you cannot expect growth. Right? If you get 1 or 2% or even 3%, that's a huge bonus. Right? Having said that, I must tell you, with even a low interest regime of 5 to 6%, our credit growth was not that good. Right? So there is not much of a difference whether you have a low credit growth now and having a high regime, right, when the interest rates are high. Having said that, I must tell you, for us, this interest rates going up to maybe 15 plus or even 20 was inevitable. It had to go.
Why do you say that?
It had to go because for us, when the economy is not doing well, when economies are doing well, now for instance US, Canada or even Singapore, interest rate, Japan, interest rates are 0.5%, right? They pay 0.5% as fixed deposit because inflation is down, right? The country is doing well and the interest rates are down.
So therefore, those stock markets must be doing pretty well.
Those stock markets are doing well, not as well as what we used to do, because for us, we had, I guess, a lot of manipulations in the market.
On that note, on market manipulation, we'll come back to that in a minute. Let's have a look at this evening's headlines from the Primetime News team. We'll see you on the other side of the break, shall we?
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
New cabinet appointed. President mulls past decisions.
ජාත්‍යන්තර මූල්‍ය අරමුණට සමග වැඩසටහනකට මීට පෙර යන්න තිබුණා කියලා මම විශ්වාස කරනවා. ඒ වගේම ගොවීන්ට රසායනික පොහොර ලබා නොදීම මම හිතන්නේ වරදක් කියලා මම.
Protests continue at Coalface.
ලැජ්ජ නැති වැඩ කරන්න එපා. රෙදි ගලවලා තියලා ගෙදර යන්න.
Why did the Fort Police go to court?
අපි මේ කණ්ඩායම දඩයන් කිරීමට උත්සාහ කරන බවට නීතිඥ ප්‍රජාව ඒ වෙනුවෙන් සැලකිලිමත්ව හිටියා.
The Cardinals' stance.
යම් හේකින් මේ කියන දේවල් නොකර ජනතාව රැවටීමට අද තියෙන නායකත්වයේ කටයුතු කළොත් අපි ඒ අයගෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටින්නේ කරුණා කරලා අයින් වෙලා යන්න වැඩක් බලන්න.
Fuel shortage continues despite hike in prices.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with the former Director General and Senior Advisor of the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Malik Cader. Mr. Cader, you mentioned market manipulation. How bad is the situation?
Well, not that we have any particular evidence at this moment of time, but looking at it on the face of it, the market simply zoomed up from about 6,000 points to 14,000 points.
Right.
There are some counters that was unbelievable, right from...
So if I wonder if I'm going to be flippant by saying, well, you know, that's because there is market manipulation, or I could also be even more flippant and say, well, that's the nature of the market.
For us, in a regime where investors had to be protected, I don't think there is merit in that second statement you said, because the regulator has a duty, right, to take the bull by the horn. You look at some of this... Are you
satisfied with what the regulator is doing now?
Well, I think they can always do better than this, because what happens is when the market went up, you look at some of those stocks, fundamentally...
Who interferes?
Fundamentally, it was a bit difficult to look at those stocks, the prices it were commanding in the market, right? And most of those companies, these are a good lesson for investors, are companies with small public floats,
right, so
less than 10%.
So when you're investing in the stock market, you want to buy something, do have a close look at the level of public float.
When the public float is small, tiny, then you can manipulate the share price higher. For instance, there are some big companies like can
the members of the public get lists that says, look, this is the public float of these companies? Can we get a listing?
Yeah, there is a listing available. I think that it's available in the Colombo Stock Exchange website, right? The public float is there. So it's public information.
Yes, so the bottom line is that the public must be informed about their investment decisions,
right,
especially at a time when money is in such short supply.
Quite right.
You know, so you must be mindful of that.
Yeah.
What about investing in property then?
For us, investing in property at this moment of time, if you are going to get, for instance, we're looking at real estate, we're looking at apartments, right? If the prices have not gone up, this might be a good time to buy, because what happens is you're looking at the prices of building materials have gone up by about 3 to 4 times. Steel, which was 600 rupees, is 2,350.
What sort of loan to value are you likely to get from banks to buy property? What percentage?
Yeah, banks. I think the banks will also be very careful, right, in lending.
Is that because this is kind of a bubble?
Because what happens is, for us, you're looking at an apartment at least 70, 80 million, right, and your payback. You're looking at your payback must be about, I don't know, in the range of 500,000 or even ₹1,000,000. So to give a credit facility for a monthly payment to a person between 500,000 to ₹1,000,000, a lot of assessments will be needed to done.
Do you think apartment prices will go down? I can see all over this place, where near the studio, there's all sorts of developments coming. Who's buying them? Where's the money?
Well, people are still buying. People are still buying. We don't know whether there is foreign money coming into it, right? But then there are plenty of places which are offering. The other question is whether they are selling, right? Whether some others.
The third question then is how much of this is black money?
Yeah, that's something which basically the authorities will have to go into. In fact,
and maybe in this new ambience.
In fact, I think where the real estate is concerned, I think they have a responsibility to go in to know your customer, and they have to report that to the AML, Anti-Money Laundering Authority of Sri Lanka. So that is also captured, but we don't know whether that's been done properly.
And this, when you're investing in, if you're considering to invest in property, should it be, how much of it should be your own money, equity, and how much should it be of debt? What's an ideal?
For us, an ideal situation where property is concerned, right? If you put 100% of your money into the property, that's the best scenario, right? In a regime where you're paying about 30% interest to the bank, right? I don't think it makes any sense.
Is it likely that banks will fix, if they're giving you a loan, are they likely to fix the rate today for the next 5 years?
No, they won't do that. The banks will not do that. Generally, the banks won't do that,
right?
Because what happens is they will obviously go on a floating basis. Because for us, we don't know where we are heading. We don't know where we're heading right now, right? Because IMF has still not given us a green light, right?
Do you think this market's been closed? Back to that, because we're waiting for Mr. Ali Sabri and team to give us some direction after initial discussion with IMF.
Yes, for us, within the 5 days, if there's some good news which is happening, right, the market opening on the 5th day, there can be a bit of a difference, right? We are very hopeful that there'll be some good news coming, because that's good for Sri Lanka.
Well,
and
the
good
president
for the
himself has admitted today that we ought to have gone to the IMF a long time ago. But my problem with that statement is that he's the appointing authority. Why did he give them so much leeway? Why didn't he put his foot down and say, look, we must go to the IMF? Why say it now when it's almost too late?
For us, there's a lot of damage which has been done. Look at the fertilizer. He's also going on to say, fertilizer, I should have done this.
Yes, but right? that's a bit like Sarat Silva saying, oh, look, I made a terrible mistake about Mahinda Rajapaksa after the event.
For us, people are now paying a lot for all those mistakes that were done. What is the redress you're having to these poor Sri Lankan masses?
Well, here's a message from one of our viewers. And this, hopefully I'm going to read the whole thing out, okay? Pray, pray, pray. Please continue to pray for Sri Lanka. Plead with God to heal this beautiful nation from lawlessness, poverty, sadness and stress. Most of all from physical, financial, mental, emotional and psychological trauma caused by selfish, greedy, uncouth, arrogant, wicked, corrupt leaders, both national and state. People are suffering. Thank you for that wonderful message to us. Do you think
that's a very good message? That's a very good message. For us, I mean, you're talking about Golf Face, right? You go there.
Yes, they're complaining. Some muppet complained about that this is singing and some dance
Correct,
and
right.
some sort of, what nonsense.
Whatever they are saying
People.
there, whatever they are saying there in the golf face comes from the bottom of their heart.
Of
I
course.
was just listening to your 7 o'clock news. There was a very famous Sri Lankan stage actress who was screaming. You could see in her face the anger she has, right? She was screaming, "Why are you doing this to us?" Right? That is the pulse.
They
of
feel
the-
terribly let
pulse
down,
of the,
the public,
pulse of the
don't they?
people.
Don't they? The public, they feel terribly let down.
Terribly let down.
I'm very sad about all this, but at the end of the day, when we're talking about personal finance here, the time has never been better, has it, Mr. Cader, for us to avoid speculation and to get to the basics and to invest your money in solid funds. That's it.
For us, you have to be extremely careful. This is very difficult times for all Sri Lankans, because we have already lost 40% of our wealth. It can even be 50% with the dollarizing, right? If you were to send 100 pounds, right, of Sri Lankan money converted to pounds to UK, now you'll have to spend double to send it.
It used to be about 180 something.
Right now it's almost 450.
411.
That's okay. So for us, we have got poorer, right? So being poor, now we have to be a little bit more prudent, right, in where we're going to invest our money. Having said that, for us, I must also tell you, right, we don't know how poor we are, right? It has still not hit the normal public. They're just beginning to feel it. The next 2 months, hopefully, IMF will come and bail us out. It's not going to be very rosy.
So it's looking dire. But honestly, these protests, the people's protests, are not just in Galface. They're in Gaul, they're in Jaffna. The protesters and different people from different walks of life. The farmers have been protesting, for example. Okay, the president says he's going to give them. But I wonder at how much. Because, the IMF are not for subsidizing anything.
No doling out.
I spoke to a farmer the other day. He said the bag of fertilizer, I don't know if it's true, but this is what he said. He said it's close to 15,000 for a 50-kilo bag.
Right.
And I've been trying to ask some politicians from both sides of all sides, at how much are they willing to let this bag of 50 kg poorer to be sold? No one's committing themselves to anything. They're all running shy of these questions. I wonder why.
Yeah, I think authorities are running away from the problem. In fact, appointing these 17 cabinet ministers, I wonder
Is
how
that
much.
changing the pillow for a headache?
I think so. For us, I don't know. Hopefully they'll be competent enough to take Sri Lanka to the next level, which we can only wait and see.
But at the end of the day, and as a legal man, I'm sure you'll see, what I'm saying is true, that, it is the people who are sovereign, not the executive,
Not the executive.
not the legislature, and not the judiciary. It's the people.
It's the people, quite right. And what you can see out there are the people now asking for their rights.
A young person who's near me said that we're protesting today because our parents didn't do it in their lifetime.
Quite right. So they're doing it right now. And I think that's the support Galface, Kandy, Matara and Jaffna is happening at the moment.
I think we should all say we should all recognize the fact that the people of this country have said enough is enough, and we want a real change, not this hocus pocus business.
Right. I think the people you're talking about are asking for that, and they're pretty strong in what they're saying.
Power to the people. That's all I can say. Power to the people. And coming from a channel that is putting the people's interests first, I think we have every right to recognize that that is what is going on out there. The people are sovereign, and they are exercising that sovereign option of theirs. Malik Cader, thank you very much for being on.
Thank you for us for having me on the program.
Absolute pleasure. And it's now time for the Primetime News from our fabulous Primetime News team. Take care and God bless you all.